Hello everyone, you're watching Awaz News. I'm Kubra Ali and I'll be taking you through top news across Canada.
Officers called to Pickering car theft ahead of crash that sent 4 to hospital SIU. Terrorism in its darkest form, Duckford speaks on motion to condemn Hamas attacks. Slowdown in inflation supports interest rate, pause next week, economists say. Hitting a hospital in Gaza not acceptable, Trudeau says of Israel-Hamas war. Markham Public Library apologizes after manager tells staff to not actively promote Islamic Heritage Month. Personal trainer in Georgetown, Ontario charged with sexual assault. Toronto police identify victim of deadly York stabbing, man facing murder charge.
These were the headlines. Now let's jump right into the details.
Canada's inflation rate edged down to 3.8% last month as price pressures eased across the economy, setting the stage for the Bank of Canada to hold its key interest rate steady next week, economists say. Statistics Canada released its latest Consumer Price Index report on Tuesday, which showed inflation showing once more in September after rising to 4% in August. The data was a welcome surprise for economists. The federal agency said grocery prices were up 5.8% year over year in September compared with 6.9% in August. The report shows the main upward pressures on annual inflation last month were mortgage interest costs, rent, food purchased from restaurants, gasoline, and electricity. Meanwhile, lower prices for telephone services, natural gas, air transportation, childcare and housekeeping services, and furniture helped pull inflation down. Economists reacting to the latest inflation data say that it adds more evidence that the Bank of Canada, which is gearing up for a rate decision on October 25th, can remain on the sidelines and wait for inflation to continue falling. I think the Bank of Canada will smile a little bit after this report. It takes the pressure off them heading into next week's meeting, and they should very much be on hold when they make their decision, said Benjamin Reeds, BMO's Managing Director of Canadian Rates and Macro Strategist. The central bank's key interest rate sits at 5%, the highest it's been since 2001. The Bank of Canada will be paying close attention to core measures of inflation which strip out price volatility to gauge the direction in which inflation is headed. The inflation report showed the central bank's preferred core measures have decelerated since August but remain elevated. Since last year, economic growth has slowed significantly and the labor market is no longer as hot as it was coming out of COVID-19 lockdowns. The Bank of Canada's most recent Business Outlook survey published Monday also shows business sentiment continue to weaken in the third quarter as companies said they expect sales growth to slow over the coming year. As previous rate hikes continue to feed through the economy, forecasters anticipate the softness to continue. Economists estimate it can take 1 to 2 years for the full effect of a rate hike to work its way through the economy. Durham police say they were called to a car theft in progress prior to an overnight collision that sent 2 suspects and 2 officers to hospital. The incident, which is now being investigated by Ontario's police watchdog, happened on Sultana Square near Whites Road and Shepherd Avenue at around 4:15 a.m. Tuesday morning. Officers arrived on scene and they located a suspect fleeing from the residence, Durham Police Constable Nicholas Gluckstein told Awaz News. He entered a vehicle. That vehicle attempted to flee the area, but it was involved in a collision. The driver of that vehicle fled on foot, but he was arrested a short distance away. Officers and the K9 unit pursued the driver of the vehicle on foot and apprehended him, Gluckstein said. According to police, the vehicle involved in the collision was stolen and the suspects were attempting to steal other vehicles in the area. 3 suspects are in custody, police said. The Special Investigations Unit, SIU, said a 21-year-old passenger and 27-year-old passenger from the suspect vehicle were transported to hospital to be treated for serious injuries sustained in the collision. 2 officers sustained minor injuries in the collision as well and were transported to local hospital for treatment, Durham police said. Images from the scene showed a police cruiser with extensive front-end damage several feet away from a damaged sedan resting next to a tree on someone's front lawn. 3 investigators and 2 forensic investigators have been assigned to the case, the SIU said. Toronto police have identified the victim of a deadly stabbing in New York and charged a suspect with a second-degree murder. Officers were called to the area of Davenport Road and Exbridge Avenue at approximately 10:25 p.m. on Sunday for a report of a person with a knife, police said. When officers arrived on scene, they allegedly located a man with a knife and arrested him. Upon further investigation, investigators said a woman was located at a nearby residence in the area of Rogers and Old Western Roads. She had been stabbed and was pronounced dead at the scene, police said. In a news release issued Tuesday, police said the victim is 57-year-old Toronto resident Anna Paula Kitterhing D'Souza. She is the city's 56th homicide victim of the year. Police have identified Michael Calvo, a 46-year-old Toronto resident, as the suspect in connection with the stabbing. He has been charged with second-degree murder. It's unclear what relationship, if any, the suspect shares with the victim. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the bombing of a hospital in Gaza is not legal and is calling the situation absolutely unacceptable. Trudeau was responding to unfolding reports by the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry that an Israeli airstrike hit a hospital in Gaza City, killing hundreds of Palestinians, including people using the hospital as shelter. A spokesman for the Israeli military said it was still collecting details on the incident, saying he did not know whether the airstrike came from Israel. Trudeau said in French, speaking to reporters on his way into the House of Commons, that it's not legal to bomb a hospital. Trudeau has repeatedly said that wars have international rules that must be followed, and says Canada is working with allies to get a humanitarian corridor established so supply can be brought into Gaza. Aid organizations are warning that the territory is near collapse, and Trudeau told reporters that hitting a hospital is not acceptable. Early in the day, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly said that an Israeli with ties to Canada who had been declared missing is now confirmed dead amid the continued fallout from Hamas' recent surprise attacks on Israel. On her way into the Liberals' weekly cabinet meeting, Joly offered condolences to the families of Tiferet Lapidot. She said the woman was one of the 3 Canadians reported missing after Hamas attacked southern Israel on October 7, killing more than 1,400 people and setting off a war that has left more than 4,000 dead on both sides. Joly said that during her recent trip to Israel, she met with Lapidot's Canadian father in Tel Aviv, as well as Lapidot's uncle, who described her as a brilliant, beautiful young woman. The Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs described Lapidot as an Israeli woman with Canadian parents, saying in a statement that her family asked that news of her death be shared with media, including Lapidot. Joly said at least 6 Canadians were killed when Hamas crossed into Israel from the Gaza Strip on October 7th and launched an attack against civilians. 2 Canadians remained missing. Trudeau said Monday that it is possible that Canadians who are missing could be among the 199 hostages taken by Hamas. But Global Affairs Canada has warned against speculation and declined to provide any details, saying that could further endanger hostages. Canada is still trying to get citizens and permanent residents in Israel and both Palestinian territories out of the region as Israel prepares itself for a ground invasion of the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. Global Affairs Canada said late Monday that it has heard from nearly 300 Canadians living in the West Bank and nearly 380 living in the Gaza seeking assistance. While 2 more flights arranged by the Canadian military are set to depart from Tel Aviv on Tuesday, Canadians inside Gaza remain trapped as international aid agencies warn of worsening humanitarian crisis. Joly said that Gaza is one of the worst places to live on earth right now. That's why we are really working extremely hard to make sure there is a humanitarian corridor. Israel began blocking access to food, water, electricity, and other supplies into Gaza, the 365 square kilometer coastal strip of land next to Israel that is governed by Hamas following the group's October 7 attacks. Canada has designated Hamas as a terrorist entity for more than 20 years. Aid organizations are warning that Gaza is close to complete collapse as Israel's military continues bombing it, with Gaza's hospital running out of supplies. More than 1 million people in North were also ordered by Israel Defense Forces to leave their homes last week ahead of an expected ground invasion. The World Health Organization has characterized that evacuation order as a death sentence for hospital patients. It is also urging parties to agree to let staff and life-saving supplies into the region. International Development Minister Ahmed Hassan said Tuesday that international aid organizations can only operate in an environment of trust. They have to make sure that for them to go into Gaza, not only to bring in supplies, but to actually help people with medical needs and so on, they have to be 100% sure that their workers will be protected. Hassan said that while he's been informed that several trucks have been allowed to enter from Gaza's border with Egypt, that is not enough. He said Canada is seized with the issue. Canada has already pledged to send $10 million in aid to Red Cross and various United Nations agencies. In his address to Parliament on Monday, Trudeau also called it imperative that those in Gaza gain access to humanitarian supplies. Finding a way to bring resources into Gaza is not the only problem at hand. Many, including at least 100 Canadians, are also looking for a way out. Their hopes were dashed over the weekend as the plans to allow foreign nations to leave through the border with Egypt fell through. Jolie told reporters that 2 more flights arranged by Canadian military are departing Tel Aviv on Tuesday. So far, 1,300 Canadians have been airlifted out of Israel, and 21 others living in the West Bank left via bus into neighboring Jordan. For Canadians living in Lebanon, Jolie said, "It is time to get out while commercial flights are still available. It is now time to leave." Ontario Premier Doug Ford gave an impassioned speech at Queen's Park Tuesday while calling on the legislature to condemn attacks by Hamas against Israel. "There is no excuse, no justification for the horror we have seen," Ford said at a Queen's Park. "This is terrorism in its darkest form." The Premier made the comments while speaking about a strongly worded motion calling for a condemnation of the Hamas attacks on Israel and a recognition of the inalienable right of the State of Israel to defend itself and its people against this horrific violence. It's one of the 2 motions put forward by the government related to the Israel-Gaza conflict. The second asks of a censure of NDP Hamilton Centre Sarah Gemma for her comments about the Israel-Gaza conflict. Speaking in the legislature, the Premier spoke to the events of October 7 when Hamas launched an aerial and ground attack on towns near the Gaza Strip, killing thousands and taking hundreds of hostages. Hamas has been designated as a terrorist organization by the Canadian government. The death toll in Israel has reached 1,400 according to the latest count. This includes at least 6 Canadians. 2 other Canadians have been reported missing. The Gaza Health Ministry has said that more than 2,700 people have also been killed in Israeli air attacks. In his speech, the Premier spoke to the need to stamp out anti-Semitism and practice tolerance, adding that Hamas is also using innocent Palestinians as human shields. "Now more than ever, we wish for lasting peace and freedom for everyone in the region, and that can only be achieved by defeating Hamas for the good of the Israeli and Palestinian people, for the good of all humanity." Ford has been vocal about Israel's right to defend itself, publicly condemning the attacks by Hamas the day it occurred. MPPs are expected to debate the motion over the next few days before a vote takes place. At that time, the second motion related to Gemma's comments will be debated. The Progressive Conservatives are trying to prevent Gemma from being recognized in the legislature until she formally apologizes and removes a statement from her social media. On Monday, NDP Merit Stiles called for a moment of silence for those impacted by the war in the Middle East. Markham Public Library MPL is apologizing after an email from a manager advising staff to not actively promote Islamic Heritage Month surfaced on social media. The email in question, which was shared on social media, appears to have been written by Karen Yang, the library's publicity and marketing manager, and sent last Wednesday. "I know we had Islamic Heritage Month as part of the October merchandising topics. Given the current situation in the Middle East, it is best for us not to be actively promoting the Islamic Heritage Month. This will be perceived as we are taking a particular side," she said in the email. In the message, Yang went on to say that MPL CEO Catherine Biss and an unnamed city councillor have requested that staff take down any merchandising on this topic. If you currently have any merchandising around this topic, please take it down for now. If you haven't put it up yet, please do not, she wrote. In an October 16 statement, Biss indicated that they are aware of an email sent by MPL employee regarding Islamic Heritage Month displays, which she indicated are available at all of their branches. The library did not comment further on the content of the email but said that it was inaccurate. Markham Public Library regrets this occurred and we apologize for any confusion or hurt this caused the community, she wrote. MPL confirms that the Islamic Heritage Month displays are present in all libraries and will remain on display for the remainder of the October. Biss said that as a public library, their goal is to unite and bring people together. MPL takes pride in showcasing the positive contributions of our diverse communities through displays such as these, she wrote. The National Council of Muslim Canadians have spoken out about the incident, calling what happened Islamophobia pure and simple. We demand an immediate investigation of this from the City of Markham and immediate accountability from every person involved in the decision-making here, the non-profit organization said in a tweet. We do not think that those involved in making such a decision deserve to be on the city payroll any longer. We cannot tolerate Islamophobia, especially not from our institutions, period. There must be zero tolerance. The organization also said that since Hamas attacked Israel just over a week ago, there's been a major spike in Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian racism. Ontario Premier Doug Ford gave an impassioned speech at Queen's Park Tuesday while calling on the legislature to condemn attacks by Hamas against Israel. There is no excuse, no justification for the horror we have seen, Ford said at a Queen's Park. This is terrorism in its darkest form. The Premier made the comments while speaking about a strongly worded motion calling for a condemnation of the Hamas attacks on Israel and a recognition of the inalienable right of the State of Israel to defend itself and its people against this horrific violence. It's one of the two motions put forward by the government related to the Israel-Gaza conflict. The second asks of a censure of NDP Hamilton Centre Sarah Jama for her comments about the Israel-Gaza conflict. Speaking in the legislature, the Premier spoke to the events of October 7 when Hamas launched an aerial and ground attack on towns near the Gaza Strip, killing thousands and taking hundreds of hostages. Hamas has been designated as a terrorist organization by the Canadian government. The death toll in Israel has reached 1,400 according to the latest count. This includes at least 6 Canadians. 2 other Canadians have been reported missing. The Gaza Health Ministry has said that more than 2,700 people have also been killed in Israeli air attacks. In his speech, the Premier spoke to the need to stamp out anti-Semitism and practice tolerance, adding that Hamas is also using innocent Palestinians as human shields. Now more than ever, we wish for lasting peace and freedom for everyone in the region, and that can only be achieved by defeating Hamas for the good of the Israeli and Palestinian people, for the good of all humanity. Ford has been vocal about Israel's right to defend itself, publicly condemning the attacks by Hamas the day it occurred. MPPs are expected to debate the motion over the next few days before a vote takes place. At that time, the second motion related to Jama's comments will be debated. The Progressive Conservatives are trying to prevent Jama from being recognized in the legislature until she formally apologizes and removes a statement from her social media. On Monday, NDP Merit Stiles called for a moment of silence for those impacted by the war in the Middle East.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm Kubra Ali. I'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Have a good night.